Just for interaction to discuss how the community should vote. And historically, because the majority has been voting for Labour, so some statistics say that about 60 to 70% of the communities have always voted for Labour. So this is what we want to discuss, why community should vote for Labour and not other parties. So we'll have now views of most of the people. So where are we going to start? Who wants to start first? Then the MPs will talk afterward. They want to know your views. We'll ask Councillor Stara and them to give our views.
Yes, traditionally most of the minority community vote for Labour, but this is one of the elections in the history of UK which would be really difficult, and this would be mostly decided by the votes of BMEs, so it becomes even more crucial, the role of minority communities, and why they should vote, not just because they have been voting traditionally, but because the Labour is the party which actually protects the rights of the people, the ordinary and working class people. Like, for example, you say that there are lots of cuts to national health services. Labour Party is proud to have founded this organisation, but this is under threat under the Tory government, and we cannot just afford to let this be destroyed by the Tory government and lose all the facilities because they are just taking it towards privatisation gradually. We talk about the 0-hour contracts. As you know that lots of people are being disadvantaged. They do not have any permanent jobs, and they've been forced to work for 0-hour contracts. And there is no security of jobs, and then lots of cuts to children's services, tuition fees going up. A lot of youngsters, they are unable to go to uni, continue their education, and then you come to the UK, who's totally anti-immigration without actually taking into consideration that immigration has pros and cons, and there have been a lot of immigrants who have been vital for the economy of this country. They have played an important role here. So you cannot just completely rule out that immigration is totally bad. Yes, there are some issues which have to be taken into consideration, and definitely Labour will consider that. And then the housing crisis, and everybody knows that the situation, especially in London, is really worse. Tenants cannot afford to pay their rents, but the Labour government is talking about that if they come to power, they will be bringing rent control. They will look for ways to legislate rent control. And also, they will also freeze the price for the energy. So there are a number of policies which actually benefit ordinary and working class people, and ethnic minorities are the people who should vote for Labour Party, because they are the ones who actually speak on their behalf. They are the ones who talk about the majority, not the few prestigious ones who are rich, and the Tories are always looking for ways to cut their taxes and just trying to look after their friends. So it's not just that they are ethnic minorities, so they should traditionally be voting Labour Party in the past, so they should continue voting. No, but just because this is the party which will be in your favour, because they will stand for you, for your rights, for your children's right, and for your work and all the other services which are under threat under the Tory government, and we cannot afford to have another 5 years under this government. So it is important that our communities, different communities who have not been voting in the past, they should come out, they should register their vote, and they should fully participate, because no vote, no voice. If you vote, you will be asking your representatives to stand on your behalf and work for the issues that matter most to your heart.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that that's what we need to see, which party is closer to our issues. And most of the issues which are being discussed on these election campaign most of the issues are which actually matter to us more than other people, which includes immigration, NHS, and all these social services funding. So these are all the issues where Labour Party is actually talking about, and Conservative are basically they are on the cut. So and that's what we have seen in the last 5 years. So yeah, that's right. Natasha, can you please tell us why we should vote for Labour?
You want me to tell you why?
Yeah, please tell us.
Really, so at the moment we're seeing all these billboards and signs and all coming up. And I think we should be putting up a big billboard saying officially Labour Party is the biggest political party with over 200,000 members. Why do we have over 200,000 members? The Conservatives like to say, oh, it's because they're very well organised, they have a lot of people on the ground, there are a lot of supporters. We have these supporters and we make them our members so that they are committed and loyal to us. And they're loyal only because Labour Party gives them what they want. Because they make sure that we give them a just and fair society.
Okay.
When Labour is in power, who gave India its independence? In 1947, if we remember, it was Labour. It was not the Conservatives. There was no sign of UKIP. There was no racist party as such over there. At that time, it was Labour who gave the independence, who agreed to it. When we talk about people succeeding, at the moment, Ed Miliband's line is, when people succeed, Labour succeeds. When Labour succeeds, people succeed. And Britain succeeds when the people succeed. And that is something very important because at the moment we see how people are living really lives of poverty, how economy has suffered with the massive cuts which we were saying are very drastic and it was not taken into account. And now we are seeing the effects of it, where economy should have been booming by now, according to what George Osborne was telling us. We are not seeing it shift. It's moving so slowly. So we need to look at all these things. We look at our NHS being privatized, as Sitara over here said. Do we really want to do the American system of having insurances in place, not knowing when, where, how much would be needed, not being able to provide our people the emergency services that they required unless they had a card in their pocket? So we need to look at these things. We need to look at the education. People cannot afford the £9,000 tuition fee for universities, and since the fee was introduced, actually the percentage of students who are enrolling in universities has gone down. And we cannot turn a blind eye to it and say, oh, it's just because people are losing interest, they're going into vocational fields. It is not that. It is a case of the children are wise enough to realize that once they come out of universities, some of them will be taking subjects which will not give them the finance to be to afford to pay back the loans in time. And although on the one hand it will give a blanket cover to everybody, it is still too much. And Labour has pledged that we will bring the fee down to £6,000 if they are elected. At the Birmingham rally on Saturday, Ed Miliband and our MP for Birmingham, Khalid Mahmood, is here, and he would know more than me on this. But Ed Miliband has given our 5 key election pledges. And if we look at them, they are focused on the deficit, immigration, living standards, health services, and a promise to help young people, and which is very important. Who is the future for Britain? It is the younger people, it is the youth, and the youth is suffering at the moment. We need to look after them. Why should we vote Labour? We should vote Labour to ensure that our future is brighter, that we ourselves live in a country where our health is, as when we were younger, we should be able to give the same thing to the children that we have, who are nowadays questioning us as to whether they should actually live over here anymore, whether my children have started questioning whether they should move abroad. I'm very loyal and faithful over here. I've always voted Labour. I voted Labour even before I knew what Labour was all about. And once I knew, and I knew how much my own socialist values reflected in Labour, and how much Labour's values were reflected in me, I decided I would stick with Labour. We see a lot of people defecting to UKIP from Conservatives, from Labour, but are they actually defecting for the right reasons? I think not. I think most of the people who are defecting over to UKIP are because they couldn't get seats, they couldn't get what they wanted, and it is more a career move than a political or a decision that is actually reflecting their own values. So, should we vote Labour? I believe we should vote Labour. If we want to have ourselves a better future, a better youth growing up, a health service as we knew it, which is the pride and joy of Britain, I think we should vote Labour. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The purpose of this meeting is that you give your message, which will obviously be seen and heard by so many people. So you just give your views, how you feel that you should support Labour. This is basically, it's a pro-Labour event. It's not that we are going to have a different view, but if you give your strongest points, which you feel that this is why you support Labour and this is the reason you think that the communities should vote for Labour Party.
So we can't be the devil's advocate.
You can, and I ask you to do that now.
Okay. Well, personally, I do strongly support Labour for different reasons. But I think there are, always some things or some areas for improvement in every part. I believe that Labour has done a lot for the community, especially the minority ethnic communities. But I also believe that for them to have left the country in such a huge deficit, there were some things that could have been done differently. For instance, if we need to think about the GDP, and I know that currently we're in a deficit, and the Labour is promising that they're going to do tax cuts and they're going to increase government spending, that's just going to reduce the ability for the government to recover from the deficit. So that I don't know to what extent is going to be the right policy. And if we look at the monetary policy and reduce interest rates, there's a likelihood there's going to be inflation. And I think in the short run and also in the long run, that's also counterproductive for the economy. So unless the Labour comes up with a policy that can sustain development and be able to support regenerative services either through export-oriented policies or supply-side issues, again that has a cost attached and an opportunity cost. Because if you invest in these things, you have to have the money to be able to invest. And where do we generate that money from? Is it going to come from foreign investments, FDI, or export-oriented growth, or is it going to be borrowed from abroad? If it's borrowed, how are we going to generate the money to pay it back? So I think just saying that they're going to do all this without thinking through how they're going to do it is maybe less realistic. Government cuts, if it is a tax cut, how do we generate the income to run the economy? And if we say we need to invest more, we have a deficit, how is that going to be done, you see? So I think, yes, the policies are right, but I don't know how practical and feasible they are in practice. And unless there are some issues that the government is, have up their sleeve and that's not shared with the public, that's different. But if it's known to the public, I think we can better support other fellow beings and tell them that you need to vote for Labour because that's what they're going to do. And yes, it's nice to say we'll do this, we'll do that, but how and what would be the policies to do that, that isn't too clear.
Yeah, the speakers will keep noting your
Sorry,
points.
your
Then
name, Who's your name, please?
Freha is she is a teacher, she's an economist, and she is the general secretary of a quite active organization. So she's quite involved. I think we go to the men's side and ask Mr. Safi to comment on the subject.
Well, perhaps I have every reason to vote for Labour when I compare it with other parties. Even because I personally have been I have faced personally crime, health issues, education issues.
Okay.
So I can see it. And what happened, even just a couple of days ago, I read in the newspaper, police forum, they were just asking the general public to ask their local politicians to stop government cutting the spending on the police. Nearly 2,000 police officers' jobs have been cut only from within the London. That means crime rate going up and people feel insecure with all these sort of things. And like, this money, whichever is going to be spent on the police force, is just a matter of money management, I would say. Like, this lady was just saying that where the money is going to come. Actually, it's not money. I mean, for some things, it just needs money management. Like, for example, instead of paying people in terms of benefits, why can't you supply them the jobs? Like, the police force definitely cannot be compromised at all, because that is a peace of mind for people. If they see the police patrolling around, then people feel comfortable. And at the same time, and I personally was scared a couple of days ago. Local police officer came, he just knocked the door and said, "Oh, the burglary happened, you're next door. So nothing to worry about, it happened, so we are working on it, so now you do this, keep your doors locked, this and that. We are going to increase our patrolling over there." So the thing is, it didn't stop. It happened again the same week. It happened twice, within 1 week. So that means police people, they couldn't cope with this, the problems which they are having. And now, apart from this issue, NHS is really a feature of Britain. And we as a nation perhaps are really proud of it. And the best feature we have is the NHS, because people, anybody, any problem, simply go to A&E and get treated, come back, fine. Nothing to worry about any insurance or any problem. But the thing is, when we hear about the nearest hospital is King George's Hospital, that's always under threat of closure. Always we sign petitions, we're working on it, requesting the governments to keep it in operations. Although it's still in operation, but I feel it is still under threat. It can be closed any time. So I would request the Labour government, when it comes to power, ensure that these hospitals are sustained and rather improved, if possible. And in education, like the ceiling fee, maximum fee up to £6,000, that sounds affordable. But now when you pay up to 9,000, too high. The other reasons, which we can't see only which government, which political party is closer to the people. So we have to see which party has distances with the people. I can remember this last campaign of London Mayor's campaign. Ken Livingstone was suggesting that he will maintain this train fares, whichever they were. That was one day travel card used to be £8.50 or something. But now it has gone up to £12.50, which is a lot of money. And I really like the word which he used, Ken Livingstone. He used to say, we want this money to keep running in the veins of economy of London. Actually people should use this money, spend this money in shops, and at least it will be circulating for something better, where community can be, it will be more beneficial for the community. So these are the things which the Labour government can, in addition to adding something more, they can also see where the Tories went wrong, what people made shift their support from Tories back to the Labour. That's it.
Thank you very much. Babar Habib is a very strong supporter of Labour, and he belongs to a quite large family, and they're all very strong supporters. So Babar Habib would like to have your views. Why do you support Labour?
Yeah, we've been supporting Labour for a very long time. It's just due to the fact that
compared to the other parties, their party delivers on what they say most of the time. So yeah, that's what we do with Labour. One of the things is student loans and stuff. When you the things sorry, the government charging you £9,000 at the moment. If Labour can bring that down to 6,000, it'd be really good. So I think that's a good thing for Labour to do. So, yeah.
We've got some other very active members of the party and community. Neda, you want to say something?
I do actually, but I want you to give me a stance of why we should support Labour. Obviously, my family have always supported Labour, so I do strongly support Labour. But at work, I'm always questioned by my colleagues that why do you support Labour? And why, obviously, I'm not 100% sure how to convince them that why they should be supporting Labour. They're really not into politics, or they don't know what conservative or what exactly Labour does and everything. So I would really want you to tell me and why we should do it.
Okay, so your question is that, yeah, come on this side, please. Well, this is what we will at the end say why we support Labour, but that's your question, which is noted and that will be answered. Okay. Sarah Khan, you have a big speech prepared.
I think we should support Labour because of immigration matter. It's never been that worse in Labour government. And also for the student fees. These are the mainly, I think, most important issues that we should, support Labour. In my opinion. Rest, any other government, but these are two issues, the main issues. We need to support Labour.
Sorry, can I add something? I think Labour has one plus point compared to the Conservatives. I personally feel that Labour is much more integrated into the community compared to the Tories or the Conservatives. They seem to come from a particular class, from a segment, and they tend to stick there. They don't blend in with the rest. And that comes quite through and through, I see Labour MPs and representatives, the councillors and other people engaging with community leaders. They go to mosques, they go to temples, holy event, and Eid events and other events. That's very positive, especially when the community is so segregated and we tend to be at war with different things, especially religious and ethnic issues and all that. So Labour is perhaps the only party that can join and bring people together to bring that cohesion that's so much needed now. I guess more than ever, considering the external environment and all these terrorist issues and all that. The very fact that we are still together is perhaps because of these bonds that Labour has built over the years. So if that can be strengthened, that can be extremely useful to have in the society.
Could you please introduce yourself in detail, because some people don't know you and we would like to have your views.
I will do that. My name is Zahid Mahmood. I have been doing accountancy practice for a number of years. In accountancy doing more than 13 years in the UK. And my personal experience with my clients is Labour has been fantastic. Because the backbone of the economy is the small businesses. And if you back your small businesses, which is, the economy actually, that creates a business, that creates a job, and the money is, circulating in the economy actually. And unfortunately, the Tory governments have not done much. They promised a lot, but they didn't live up to their, their promises. And the banks, the lending issues, the loan issues, the overdraft, for the small businesses, which is very important, the new businesses, unfortunately, they didn't do much practically. Theoretically, yeah, they have been promising, but that is a financial issue, and that can help the Labour government. Obviously, the previous Labour government during that period, I believe that the small businesses were booming, growing, and obviously you never had that sort of unemployment in the country. And now you see the young people, they have the financial issues, then they create the housing issues, and then obviously they multiply. For one thing to another, they are all linked. So when things are interlinked, you need to focus on those. So because I'm in the financial sector, and I believe that the government, the Labour Party should put more, focus on that part for the small businesses, that they will surely help the small businesses as they did in the past, and that will definitely, help. But as far as the other issues like NHS, energy, and the housing things, like there is a rip-off at the moment actually, because we deal with the account, the estate agents and the individuals as well. That the short-term tenancy agreements, which is like costing so much, and individuals suffer actually. The people who are like estate agents or the landlords, they make big money out of the short tenancy agreements. So I would definitely prefer that government, the Labour should focus on that one as on top of the NHS or the energy issues or the other sectors or factors.
Right, we have a very important member of the community that have just joined us, and we have two things to actually talk about and to send the message across. One is that communities, particularly Pakistani community, must come out and vote. One thing which has been noted over the time is that the communities are not interested, and some communities are interested in politics of other countries. And whoever, anybody wants to vote, but they must vote. We are joined by Mr. Muzaffar Chawdhury. He might be supporting Labour or not, but it's very important that he can tell us why it is important that we all must vote. So Mr. Muzaffar Chawdhury, everybody knows, he is a former president of UK PCCI and very important member of the community.
You see, actually, especially particularly, I would like to say to all the immigrant communities, especially Pakistanis as well. You see, we are now in this country. Our future is here. Our generation's future is here, next generation. Nobody is going back now, none of us. This is our homeland, and when this is our homeland, we should take active part in all the activities of this country, especially political activities, because more you go into politics, become councillor, member of parliament, and when you participate in the elections, you are giving your own opinion, whichever party you are voting, you see. Because this is the real political process. The democracy gets stronger only by participating in the voting and becoming the part of the establishment, you see. Now, why I am saying it is important, most of immigrants communities, especially our ones from Pakistan, I've seen they're not much interested in coming out and exercising their own right. Remember, your future and your children's future is here now. You get them activate in the local politics, whichever party you are going. Labour Party no doubt has supported you. As immigrants, they help you a lot. This is a fact, you see. But my point of view is that basically, please come out, do vote, exercise your right. That is very important. That is the way you are, this is your duty to my way of thinking. I think that is the right word putting it. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to make a point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Just that basic thing, the question over here is, should we support Labour? Why should communities vote for Labour? I mean, honestly speaking, in my view, and obviously I'm a Labour supporter, is there any other party worth voting for? We already know what the Conservatives are doing because they're in government, so it's not going to be an eye-opener for us looking at the manifesto, looking at things. And any of the promises that the Lib Dems made, obviously, we know they never kept them. None of them actually. They backed out of them and they backtracked on them. So similarly, it's again going to be a case of if you go Lib Dems or UKIP or anything. It will be a case of, going to bed with Lib Dem and waking up to a Tory government, or going to bed with the UKIPs and waking up to a Tory government. And Ed Miliband's already said that there will be no coalition with the SNP either. So Labour's made its stance very clear on all of this. Labour is going to be Labour, through and through. So when you're voting Labour, you know what you're going to get. You're not going to get a coalition with the SNP, at least at the moment. But with the Tories, that is the second biggest party. So more likelihood is, if it is a hung parliament, then what will happen? Or who are we going to go into government with? If it is a Conservative, so it will form a coalition. If Labour comes into power, we must think very carefully before voting, because as I think Farial here said, she's herself a Labour supporter, but she says Labour is big on BME, and that is correct. Labour is big on BME. We are sitting over here. I think Keith was here, but he's coming back in a minute or so. He is the chair of BME, and nobody would know better than him how effective that organisation is. And when we talk about BMEs, we are BMEs. We are the ones who have to get out and vote, and it is going to be extremely important in some of the areas and localities and cities for the BMEs to come out and vote. If we want Labour, we cannot just sit at home and hope for Labour to come into power. We need to get out there. We need to make sure our friends, our families, our communities, our relatives are going to get up and vote on May the 7th to ensure that Labour is in power on May the 8th. Because if it isn't, then we're going to have another 5 years of what? Disaster, austerity we're going through right now. It's going to be another 5 years of, it's going to be worse. Right now, the central government is only paying so much to the councils, and we've all felt the effects of it. The cuts are abundant, 187 million pounds in some of the councils, and it's enormous, huge cuts. They're going to have to cut care for the disabled, for the elderly, for the children. It's all going to be cut soon, and if we're not careful, it's going to be worse. So we've got to put a stop to it. Obviously, we're not going to be able to reverse it. Even if Labour comes into power, it's not going to be reversed. It's never going to happen. But we must make sure there's a stop to it. And for that, I think we need to go out and vote Labour, and just to ensure that our elderly, we're going to grow older in a few years. We're going to be looking at things. Are we going to be fishing it out of our pockets? No. Not everybody can afford it. So we, for our own future, which is going to be ourselves and our children, we need to make sure we get up, go out and vote on May the 7th, and make sure that we vote Labour.
Can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Manjit, and I'm just here to observe. I've never been involved in anything like this before, so it's just purely as an observation.
Okay, right. Next speaker is Sonia Irfan. She's, I think, we know her. She's very, very active. She is very strong leader of PTI as well. And we have asked the leaders to focus on the politics of this country for the moment until elections. So we want her to tell her followers and everyone that they must vote. And if they vote, we would say that they should vote for Labour.
Assalamualaikum everyone. This is my first, I think, meeting over here in the House of Lords. I have been to, I think, one meeting before in House of Commons. This is my first one. At the moment, I'm actually looking at all the political parties and trying to find out which one I should actually. I want to be honest here. I don't know if I should vote for Labour. I've come here to understand and get everybody's opinion, understand what people are saying here. What I know by 2050, 1/3 of the British citizen population will be ethnic minorities. And I know that we are not represented as much as we should be. So there should be more representation of communities. And I know that a lot of Pakistani people, I know Natasha, and I know some other people that I personally know, they are participating in the Labour as well, and they seem to be quite happy and enjoying and doing a lot of community work. They are very actively taking part into this, and I feel encouraged. I am a big supporter of Imran Khan, and I take part into his party. I support him and I actively take part into that. And because I'm British citizen and I have been living here for now 13 years, and I do feel that I should participate in the British politics as well. So, this is it. I just wanted to understand and meet everyone, and this is, as I said, my first meeting, and I will now try to be more active, participate, help, and join Natasha and Dr. Saab and help them with their community activities as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That we will make sure that before you go, you are totally convinced that what is the right way to vote. I'll request now Mr. Samiullah. He's former president of UK PCCI and a successful businessman in aviation in Oxfordshire. Mr. Samiullah.
I think there's a lot has been said already about we should go and vote. But I would only add one thing, that if you're not going to vote, you will vote yourself out of the system. To be part of the system, if people will vote, it'll help to make the community's representation better and stronger within the British politics. And talking about Labour, as you mentioned, traditionally I'm from Pakistani origin, so I've seen the Pakistani community has been served better by Labour, and the representation is better in Labour, and they've been participating, and I see many successful politicians in Labour. And as far as the community is concerned, we think, as youth, everybody thinks we should be taking part more and more, we should be more active, and that way your voice can be heard better and your representation can change many decisions. And if you are actively participating in the politics of this country and doing business, living here and not contributing into the political arena, I don't think it's wise. And I would encourage all the young people especially to come forward and take part, either Labour or whichever party will really be benefit to the country and also to the community they belong. So that's all I would say, but of course going out, casting their vote will help a lot. Thank you.
Before I invite and introduce Gareth Thomas, I want to thank the media, which is in proportion more than the participant, but unfortunately today, normally we get a lot of people, but today there were so many events, so we are a little bit short of presence of people, but I think message will go, and message has been put forward very well by all of you. So I'm very thankful to Geo TV, very thankful to Apex TV, and very thankful to Din TV, and very thankful to TV 786. I'll introduce Gareth. Gareth Thomas, you never know, in a few months' time you'll be campaigning for him as Mayor of London. Who knows? But for the moment he is MP and he's a Shadow Minister for Africa and Middle East, and he's also Deputy Shadow Minister for London. Gareth Thomas.
Dr. Shoran, thanks very much, and it's great to come to a meeting. Lovely to have the media present, but frankly, if you'll forgive me, gentlemen, better to have the conversation with yourselves directly as well. I mean, I share the view that however you're going to vote, you should go out and vote. Obviously, I want people to vote Labour, but either way, I think it's very important that we all exercise our right to vote and to take part in Britain's democracy in that way. When I think the reasons to vote Labour are very strong. I think particularly if you think about the British economy in the last 5 years, what's very clear is that whilst there has been a bit of a recovery, it's not been a recovery that everybody in our country has benefited from. Average wages are down since 2010, when David Cameron and Nick Clegg did that deal in number 10 Downing Street. So if we want to make sure that everybody can benefit from Britain's future prosperity, a Labour government that is committed to making sure that we have the minimum wage increase, that we freeze energy bills, that we extend the range of apprenticeships that are on offer, and that we give the chance for the next generation coming behind our generation to go to university at a more affordable rate than the £9,000 this current government are saying. People have to vote Labour to make that choice a reality. On the National Health Service, we've seen the current government taking a deliberate decision to embark on a highly expensive reorganisation of the NHS, which they didn't say was going to happen at the last election. That reorganisation has cost over £3 billion, and the difference that money could have made in each of our hospitals, in our GP surgeries, in the social care that our elderly need would have been phenomenal. Instead, they've closed a whole series of hospitals, accident and emergency departments, particularly so in London, but in a number of other communities across the UK too. That's seen one of the biggest increases in waiting lists and waiting times since waiting times were recorded this winter just gone. We need to put more money into the National Health Service. That's why Labour has said we will bring in a mansion tax and use the resources from that to create more nurses, to recruit more nurses and recruit more doctors, and get better levels of investment into our hospitals. Somebody mentioned the tube and rail fares. If you live in London, the current government have seen a 60% rise in the cost of travelling on the tube. We want to cap train fares to reduce the amount that ordinary working people have to pay in order to get into work. And we want people to set up businesses. We want people to use their imagination and their entrepreneurial spirit, as a number of you have already done in this room. And to try and help you, we will cut business rates for small businesses, and we'll work to freeze the energy bills that small businesses have to take as well. Now, we want people to be able to afford to buy their own homes, which is why we want to drive wages up, why we want to create more decent jobs. But we recognise too that many people will have to live in private rented accommodation at different times of their lives. And instead of seeing rents just continuing to grow ever faster in terms of the rate of increase, what we want to do is to see that there are longer tenancies created, so that people have security of tenure. Then they can't be evicted just on the whim of a landlord, and in that way help to get control of the amount of rent that people are paying as well. So if you're not someone who works for a hedge fund and has millions of pounds in your pocket already, the Labour Party is the party, I think, for you. We'll look after your economic interests, but we'll also look after the services that the rest of your family need, like the NHS and like schools. And we'll also do our bit to look after the generation that comes after you, to give them the chance to go to university, to give them the chance to get an apprenticeship as well. And what we will also do is make sure that we're encouraging people from your communities to come into Parliament, to come into local councils, and to be part of the decision-making process in this country. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Khalid Mahmood and leave him to deal with all your difficult questions.
Thanks, Gareth. I think Keith will share some of them.
Thank you. We can do some difficult questions.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Gareth, for your time. Now we've got last two speakers. I think Keith has missed a lot of interesting speeches, but he had to do some important job. So we'll keep Keith for the end. We'll let him breathe.
Best of the
you want to go? Okay. Well, only two people, so should we have a draw? But okay.
I will, in deference to Keith, I will give it.
Okay.
Oh, he's so sweet.
We all, thank you very much. Okay. We all know Keith, but
I'm going to be very brief, actually, because I want to endorse everything that Gareth has said, even though I wasn't here. because I think you'll find that Gareth, Khalid and I speak the same language on this issue. And I want to, first of all, thank you for organising this meeting. I think it is important that we keep reminding the communities that this is a critical election. At the moment, we are in a dead heat with the Tories. And that means if we do not become the biggest party, and I believe we will, I still believe we can win this general election, there will be a period of uncertainty. That is why it's extremely important that people should go out and galvanise the community and ensure that they get as many people to vote as possible. Now, of course, in some areas, Perry Bar, where Khalid has been the most outstanding local MP, I know this because at the last election I went to the Lascelles Road, and it was great to see a local MP being mobbed by all the local residents. They genuinely have huge affection for him. And I think that it's not in seats like Perry Bar, even in places like Leicester. It's actually those critical seats that we need to win in order to form a government. Seats like Bradford, 2 seats in Bradford that we've got to win. A seat in Manchester, we've got to win at least 2 to 3 of the Bristol seats. And of course we need to win 10 seats in London. So there are so many opportunities for you to be part of that. What I'm looking forward to in this next government is a Prime Minister who finally has accepted, and a party that's finally accepted, that the British Asian community are part of the mainstream of politics in this country, that we're not marginalised. In a sense, having a meeting when we talk to each other doesn't convey the breadth of support that Ed has and the Labour Party has in the country. But I think that we made some mistakes. Khalid will agree, I think, with the last Labour government. I'm very proud of the last Labour government, what it did achieve. However, there were things we could have done better, which is that we could have shared power in a much more even way, allowing the Black and Asian communities to have a better say and a better shape at ensuring that they are part of the decision-making process. So that's what I'm looking forward to in this election. First of all, communities galvanising themselves and each other. Secondly, ensuring that we can be moved from the margins to the mainstream of British politics. And thirdly, to make that generational shift so that the next generation, which I see very well represented at this meeting today, are able to speak up and say what they want from the parties. And you find in the Labour Party in government, a party that is prepared to listen and is prepared to act on those policies and with that spirit. So with those very few words, Ashraf, I am going to hand over to the great Khalid Mahmood, who will speak to you now. Thank you very much.
Keith, very kind as always. Keith, of course, is somebody that we, within the overall BME community, owe a huge amount to. Keith is the longest serving BME community Member of Parliament in this place, and it's something to have, I think, as a huge role model and somebody that we respect, largely because not the fact that the length of services, and that's a matter of fact that he has, but the fact of what he's achieved during that time. He will tell you, like all of us will do, that this has not been all plain sailing. He's had to work extremely hard to maintain the level of support that he has across the party, and that's purely through hard work and effort that is done. And I think I want to say this because I think it's important for us to say this for senior people who can actually do that, who made the achievements. You know, he's not had an easy ride. He's been attacked by the media, in most instances very, very deliberately, for what he stood for. And I think people will try, and particularly some of the media who don't like people like Keith and people like us coming into this place, will always try to do him down and do us down. And he's fought that, he's fought through that, and
to the extent that now is one of the longest standing chairmen of the Home Affairs Select Committee. He was a minister in the Foreign Office and Minister for Europe as well, and somebody who's really had a huge track record. And not that had, he will continue to have an even better term until after perhaps next term is elevated to the House of Lords. And
I think we've seen that to Ashraf.
we'll continue to do that. But it's somebody who I, particularly personally, have had a huge support from, and he's really shown me the way to follow through in terms of doing all the right things and standing up for what's right as well. So thank you, Keith, for saying those words, and I think it's really appreciated, particularly new people who are coming through to be able to get them through. So thank you very much. Right, I joined the Labour Party in 1982. I joined the Labour Party not because I wanted to join the Labour Party. I joined the Labour Party because my father joined the Labour Party in 1982. He realised, before he joined the Labour Party, he was a member of the Pakistan People's Party, very active in Birmingham, had been for a long time, as he was in the 70s and coming into the early 80s. He took that role. And I think he realised he was involved in community organisation for a long time, where at a very early age we used to have to go out and go and translate for people, go and fill forms in for people, and so those sort of things that we did in the community in Birmingham quite regularly. And he decided that if there was going to be a place for his children and their children, then he had to change of what he was doing, which was move away from the Pakistani politics that were here and to integrate into British politics. And therefore, all of us, the three brothers, joined the Labour Party. I was the one that had to sort of, I sort of went with him in all the meetings and actually enjoyed listening to what was going on and seeing what was going on and played a role in that. And so we moved forward into the Labour Party. But the most important thing was what was in the interest of the community. Because of the huge track record that he had. He came to the United Kingdom in 1948. He came to join his father and his uncles who were in the United Kingdom from 1942. They were in the Merchant Navy and they were taken off during the Second World War to work with the help with the war effort. And so we have a huge track record of being in this country. And therefore he wanted to make a difference. He had been seen through all that from 1948. He decided the best way to do that was to play an active role. And that's why I think still holds very true, is that we do need to play an active role in the politics here. And even as Sonny, you have links with other parties in Pakistan. In order to achieve perhaps what you want to achieve, and I understand people who join parties across there, because they still have a huge ties to the country of their origin and families who they've been parts of. But they need to be able to have a real role in this country as well. So that's really important to try and see how we can develop that and how we can move that forward. So if you have a real understanding about this, and as Mr. Chaudhary said quite rightly, you do need to play a role in politics and in elections particularly. We might not necessarily quite agree with where you should be, but we certainly both agree that you should come out and vote. That is crucial. That is the real thing, you know, to achieve something. And you've seen over the summer, there was a lot of issues, particularly issues like Gaza, where there was a huge amount of concern within the Muslim community, the Pakistani community included as well in that. And the only way to achieve something is by being part of a political movement. And what happened, which was really interesting, two things. One was the vote against Syria, which the Labour Party at Miliband supported us on that and made sure that the whole of the Labour Party supported it. Elements within the Conservative Party and other parties supported that as well, was not to go to that. And secondly, the vote on recognition of Palestine. That was also done because we took a view, the Labour Party members, senior members of Parliament took a view, along with our Miliband and the National Executive, that this is what we should do. And we did that. And if we get, and we should do after the election, get Ed Miliband into office in number 10 Downing Street, then he will have to live up to that vote because he voted in that. So that's what part of politics is about. But more importantly, politics at home is hugely interesting and important. And I think we should look at what difference it makes. And I think if you look at the parties and look at the way things work, what the difference between, main interesting difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party is that the Labour Party looks after its people. And its people are essentially us, as Gareth said. Unless you work in the city at a very high level, or you're the landed gentry in this country, really you belong to the Labour Party. If you belong there, that's fine, you can go and be a part of the Tory party and that's about it. But really, if you look at all the issues, people mentioned the issues of immigration, people have mentioned the issues of the National Health Service, you've mentioned a number of issues about students' grants, and also about the cuts in police, and those sort of issues which are hugely important. Issue of self-employed people were raised as well. And I think the key thing is that on all of those issues, it's the Labour Party that actually looks at the interests of those people and moves forward. Because we've had such a huge interest, and we get mocked for being paid by the unions. We are supported by the unions because we're a party that has come from the unions, has come from the working people. Right? And, you know, they can say that, but how accountable are the people? And in order to get that funding from the unions, each individual member has to sign up his 56 pence a week that he puts into the trade, into the political fund to do that. So that is totally and utterly accountable when they say that. When the hedge funds and all those other people pay to the Tory party, where is their accountability of what money is coming in and how that's done and how we do that? So I have absolutely no problem. But we would understand that all of those issues about tuition fees, about things that are important to our children, the things that are important to all of us. And if you look at the National Health Service at the moment, I think there's a huge issue with where this, after having promised the fact they wouldn't do anything to the National Health Service, they have taken a huge sledgehammer to the structure of the National Health Service and privatised it and made it so much easier for people to take bits, profitable bits of the National Health Service off. So if you have a real chronic issue in health, I had a problem, thankfully I've had a transplant now, I had a huge kidney problem for the last 4 years. And if it hadn't been for the National Health Service, if I had to have operated the American system of insurances, I don't think I'd still be here, because very few people are able to afford that and wouldn't have been able to get through that. So what we have here is a fantastic system, and the National Health Service is what the Labour Party is built on. It's for the people. It was paid for by the people through our taxes that we pay, and somebody I think was saying about the issue of taxes. And also, I think Fari raised the issue of the deficit. It wasn't a Labour deficit. It wasn't, and I'll be happy to speak about it afterwards. The reason why it wasn't a Labour deficit is that we had a choice. We had a very straightforward choice. When the financial crisis happened, that we either let the people roll or we support the people. The problem was when there's a huge amount of salaries and savings that were going into those bank accounts, when you have huge amount of mortgages going into those banks, that we either had to protect the people or let everybody sink. And that is a mistake that it was introduced by Margaret Thatcher when she turned the service economy of relying on that. And if we'd carried on doing that, going down that route, we couldn't do that. One of the key things that the Labour Party is now insisting on is that we divide our banks into those casino bankings of trading and everything else, and into sensible fiscal banking, which is what banks were meant to do originally in the first place. So, you know, for people to say this is a Labour created, and when it starts to happen in the euro, the Conservatives very easily to say that, well, this is a banking issue, we need to deal with that. So we need to understand the rhetoric of what they're trying to say in terms of what's happened with the financial crash. And actually, if you look at the 18 months that Gordon Brown was in for during that financial crash, we had a far better rate of growth during that financial crash. And we were trying to address those issues. The Conservative Party said within this term, which is now coming to an end, that we will resolve the deficit. They haven't. We said we'd do it in a term and a half. I'll come back to you in a minute. We said we'd do it in a term and a half. And we've been on plan for that. Alistair Darling, again, who's a great financial person who's got a huge track record to be able to do that, wasn't allowed to do that because people felt differently. Because obviously with the crisis that came down, people were emotionally attached. And if somebody promises you they'll sort it out within the one term rather than a term and a half, you go for the quicker one because that's what you want to get out of. So there were real issues that we needed to deal with, and real issues have we dealt with. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the reason why I say you vote for the Labour Party is because if you've got children, if you want education, if you want the health service for you, if you want local amenities, and I think both Stara and Natasha said in terms of the cuts to the local authorities, cuts to care for the elderly, and all those sort of things are what Labour does, and that's what Labour always done. We're now at the moment, in terms of cutting the spending cuts for local authorities, we're comparison into the 1930s, the levels of funding that was there for them now. So there's a huge difference. That's before the National Health Service was set up. And if we were to go into another term with the Conservative Party in there, you'll see how far that goes back and what implications that has overall. So there's some real issues that we're trying to deal with, and we have to move forward. And for the community to be able to move forward, I think that really anybody who is essentially not very wealthy, i.e. really wealthy, then you have no alternative but to vote for the Labour Party. And that's why we have people like Natasha who now joined and probably player of the Labour Party. So I'm going to shoot off for a bit because I've been trained to catch back to them, but I'll take your question.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I wasn't particularly mentioning the credit crunch, so to speak. I think that was, I guess, a flaw of the banking system. Financial Services Authority, that was the organization at the time, that was the watchdog of the banking services. Now it's FCA, Financial Conduct Authority. I think they were not monitoring the system perhaps that effectively, and that's why the lending of banks was just going overboard without having any checks to see if people are able to pay back the loans they were getting. And that's a separate debate. But what I was saying that the place we are now, with the government and obviously the fiscal deficit, as we know, stands to a huge amount. For us to now say that the government will increase spending, government spending will increase, and taxation will either decrease or stay standard or stay where it is, how is that going to work? I mean, how do we generate the funds to invest back into the economy? Where would the funds be raised from? That doesn't seem that, feasible.
Well, you're quite right. I mean, what you're trying to say, but the fact is you're not looking at is what we're saying. What we're saying is that you raise those funds through better GDP output throughout the country by raising those levels of the economy that need to be raised. What you do essentially is you end up in an ever decreasing cycle. When you start to let me just give an example of local authority. Forget about the National Health Service, who's a huge spender as well. But just the local authorities, what they do is all the services, and the Conservatives continue to say they've had a record amount of employment increased. Right? The reason why that is that they've taken the services that were in the public sector into the private sector. And if you look at almost any of the local authorities, what you've got now is just recycling that rather than creating more jobs. What you've had is the services that work in the local authority sector and in the health sector to a large extent have been privatised in the private sector. And what you've had is the lowest wage levels for almost 100 years comparatively. And the reason why that is that when you push people from reasonable wages to 0-hour contracts and in those sort of economic positions, that's the disparity you get. The reason why an average family, even when you've got such high numbers of employment, is £1,600 per year worse off, is because that sustainable income isn't there anymore. And because of they're having to work under far tighter conditions, there are a lot of people who are working under 0-hour contracts, which means that gives a huge amount of power to the employer. If they think you're not working hard enough, they'll tell you at the end of the day, don't come back tomorrow. Right? On the morning you would then wake up 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever time you get up, to, depending what time you start work, and sit by your phone, hoping that you get a phone call to start work. That is a Victorian ideal that you're placed under now. And if you look at the people, speak to the people, my patch in Birmingham, that is the fear that they have. They're actually fearful of what job they're going to get, whether they're going to get sufficient income to go through, irrespective of what the overall job title, the job numbers are. And that's what the real problem is.
I think if Labour was to say that they shouldn't say that we will stop increasing taxes. They should say we'll have progressive taxing, which means the rich are taxed more.
Yeah.
Then there's income inequality because part of the high income groups are paying for the lower income groups. That would equate income, well, to some extent. There'll be more equality.
What I will do is I will send you some of the Labour stuff on it. You read it up and then come back to me. I'm quite happy to do that. I think what you're saying, we actually do say a lot more of that and actually a lot more deeper into that of how we do that. So I'm quite happy if you send an email to Dr. John or somebody and we can get back and do that. I've got to shoot off literally now because I've got to train to catch that stuff. So
Thank you very much, Khalid.
I hope I didn't say you too much.
And I honestly, it was a challenge this evening because of
Can you take another 2 minutes because this is really interesting project.
So we can continue, but Khalid will not be here.
Yeah. I've got to go. I've got to catch a train, sorry, to Birmingham. So.
Okay, go on. If you really wanted to ask Khalid, then...
No, ask Khalid. Khalid, I know he has to rush off to bed.
Okay, we can...
Probably going to be canvassing tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, everyone.
Yeah, no, Korea, what you were talking about, the economy and where we're going to raise the funds from. So it's not a case of we're going to, borrow from another bank or raise the funds and go around with a begging bowl and get funds. That's not how it works because you see it's a vicious circle. It's a cycle that carries on and on. So what Labour is promising is end of 0-hour contracts. Labour is promising a living wage rather than just national minimum wage. So all that will help pump more into people's pockets. Once people have the spending power, once they have proper jobs, when they have a living wage, they will be putting back into the economy. That will increase the spending power of the people. Once the money is put back into the economy, that's what the funds come from. So, yeah, so you do economics, so you would understand it more than me even. So that is how the funds will be generated, not, from a certain place, but it will be the power, the spending power of the people, and the spending power of people can only come from when Labour ends the 0-hour contracts, when it makes sure everybody's got a living wage rather than the basic minimum wage, that the poverty that so many people have gone into over the past 4 or 5 years, they come out of that. They're struggling. A lot of people are struggling just to survive. The number of food banks that have opened up, why? It's because the people cannot afford to put food on the table. And the Conservative Party is actually turning a complete blind eye to it. And that is not how it would work. And a lot of people are getting very frustrated. On the one hand, we say, yes, it is better. The benefit system that actually our whole generation was getting poured into is disappearing. Yes, good. Also, some of the people who are on minimum wage are not actually making enough to provide for their families, and it will just be shuffled back. It's going to be a vicious cycle. So once we have a minimum wage, once we end the 0-hour contracts, once we make sure people actually have proper jobs, the spending power will increase, it will be pumped into the economy, and that's what the country is doing.
I completely agree, partially, yes. To some extent, there has to be an investment.
That is the
But
investment.
it's time to act.
And people like Mr. Chaudhary and Ashok Chauhan who are pumping money in because their businesses are doing well, they're not working, there are people out there, and that's going to boost the economy. But they have to have a chance.
Yeah, that's true. I think statistically, we have to see how much is pumped in and how much money is generated out of that investment. Because otherwise, they're just, that's what needs to be done. But unfortunately, there are no results to show that's working. So if that isn't working, I'm on the Labour side anyway, but I think we need to think what could be done to improve.
This is exactly it. What could be done is end 0-hour contracts, make sure people have a living wage. But that's the beginning, isn't it? That's the beginning. When they say, oh, the most employment, this is the lowest unemployment Britain's ever seen, it's not because people are getting jobs. I'm sorry, I do not agree there. I know Khalid said yes, part of it. So it's part of it, but why is it lowest unemployment? Go to any of the job centres and I go and I visit. Why? Because they are told, get people out of off benefits, and to do that, what are they doing? They're making a blanket system where there'll be universal credit. So people who are probably getting 500, 600, 700 pounds a week because they have 5, 6, 7 children will get a flat rate of maybe 400 pounds, in which they have to make sure they have the housing benefit included, they will have all the council tax, everything that's included in there. So people cannot afford to even be on that. Hence, what do they have to do? They have to go off benefits into employments of 0 hours, employments of part-time work, minimum wage. So that is not going to accommodate or boost the economy.
I'm not supporting that people should be deprived of the essential services they require. However, I'm not a big supporter of the benefit system. So, you know, eventually...
Can I interfere? About economy, Conservative Party is looking at 3 things. They're looking to decrease the debts because they have to show the figures, because main supporter of that party is big corporates. They want to see a good feel factor. So they must show low unemployment, low debts. These are the figures they work for. And they have to show these figures to satisfy their voters. Their voters are all basically rich and corporate people. To do that, it is a good thing, but it is good that there are no debts, it is good that there is no unemployment. But how they do it, that they actually cut investment in the sectors which actually Labour Party wants more investment, which is social welfare, which is NHS, and these are the areas where actually, okay, these good feel factors are very good, because if it is good, then investment will come to the country and big investors will benefit. But ordinary people and the poor people, they will suffer. For example, I can only tell you what I do in my business. They have put stop on immigration, they have put stop on skilled workers as well, and literally right now my team is sitting there. We can do anything, advertising and whatever money we offer. There are no nurses in this country. And local nurses are not enough. They do not let nurses come in the country, and literally patients are honestly suffering. And we are offering almost double money at the moment. So you see, there is they have to talk about immigration because their voters, who are like a section of community, they just want to see zero immigration. That's what they want to do. And they must satisfy them. To do that, what we suffer on this end is that immigrants, they can't bring their spouses into this country. There are a lot of people who actually must be here. They cannot come due to the policies they have. The workers, they come, they ask us to earn 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. How can somebody earn coming from the third world, suddenly in the first year they can earn this money? So, these are the difficulties. These are 2 different ways to look at. And we as a community have to see what suits us, because every community looks after their own interests. Our interest is not probably looking at the figures that there is less borrowing. And borrowing, as long as I know, again comes within the country. It doesn't come from IMF or other sources. But we want more investment in the public sector. We want to see that, people who are on benefit. There's a lot of community who came in 50s and 60s in this country. They worked all their life in this country, and they deserve now to live on the resources in retirement. And they are being deprived from that because they are cutting all the investments into the community so that they show the proper statement at the end of the day. So this is the difference between the 2 parties.
I'm all for Labour, but I think even when we support a party, we have to have criticism in a constructive manner. We need to see this is what we've done better or good, and this is where we've lacked some things. There's always need for improvement. There's always room for improvement. If we're able to identify our areas of improvement, we can then develop effective and better policies next time. So what we lacked last time and what let us down, and that's why they took over once at least. Let's not do the same mistakes again. Let's
You made your point, very good. Good,
You
excellent.
will find that they're
Good.
looking at it.
Very good.
Yeah.
And because there must have been something for us to lose. When people take over, that means something we did was wrong. So if we don't identify and pinpoint, by critically asking ourselves, let's look at immigration. Fair enough, we need people to come outside. But Britain is a small country. There's capacity issues. You know, in a small room, you can only fit, 50 people, 100 people here. You can't fit in 2,000 here or 5,000. If that's what you're doing, is there you need to draw a line. Have we looked at those issues? Where do we draw the line? Where is the marginal utility increasing or actually decreasing? And how do we get the maximum capacity from the little resources we have? How do we get the utilization improved? If those things are not being done, then we're actually damaging ourselves.
No, very good point.
Very positive.
I think these very important media people, they have to take shots of you people. So let's finish this. But thank you very much. I'm honestly thankful to each and every of you because it was a bit of a challenge to get people together at that time. So I think we did our job very well. Thanks very much. Thank you.